Are you on the fence about voting in the U.S. elections this year? Maybe you're young and feel like none of the candidates resonate with you. Or perhaps you're disillusioned by the lack of real change on the issues that matter to you. Trust issues with the system? You're not alone. But here's the deal. Voting isn't just about picking leaders. It's about making sure our voices are heard on the issues that matter. Let's dive into some quick facts to ease your mind. First up, voter fraud. It's extremely rare. Many claims you hear, they often fall apart under scrutiny. We have solid election security measures in place, ensuring that every vote counts and that no one is voting in someone else's name. And guess what? Mail-in ballots have been successfully used for over 150 years. That's right. States have built layers of security to keep our elections safe. Now, about those voter registration rolls, don't worry. They don't show whether you owe child support or have any outstanding warrants. And law enforcement, they can't just stroll into a polling place without permission. Your voting experience is yours, free from unnecessary scrutiny. Whether you're 19 or 95, it's never too late to register and request your ballot, even if you're overseas. Why should I vote? None of the issues impact me. As a husband, father, brother, son, uncle, nephew, etc., your vote could affect all of the women in your life. So why not take action? Visit vote411.org today. In just 30 seconds, you can get customized voter information tailored just for you. This message is brought to you by Zetas in Action, the 501c4 arm of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Let's make our voices heard this election season.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Zetas in Action conversation on Black women and expanding our power. We all know we have just a few more days before the November 5th, 2024 general election. My name is Krista Jones. I'm a consultant to Zetas in Action. I'll have Whitney and Tony introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Whitney Hubbard. I have the pleasure and the honor of serving as the chair for Zetas in Action.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tony Monette, and I also have the privilege of serving as the vice chair of Zetas in Action.
Awesome. So I'll start. We just want to have a quick conversation this evening. I'd love to hear from both of you all. What is Zetas in Action?
I'll start, and my wonderful vice chair, feel free to fill in any holes, but Zetas in Action is the 501c4 that is associated with Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. We were established in order to do, unlimited lobbying on issues that matter to the communities that we serve, as well as some limited electoral engagement so that we could participate and have more of a voice in some of these, elections and things of that nature. As a 501c7, the sorority is not able to do that. But we know that our organization has, since we began in 1920, been a place for a lot of engagement on social issues. And so we wanted to be able to expand that reach and that voice on these issues that really matter to the communities that make up our membership and make up the communities that we serve. So establishing a C4 was really integral in helping us having a larger voice and amplifying our voice when it comes to political and social engagement issues.
Absolutely. And it's really exciting because there are so many other of the Divine Nine organizations who also have either PACs or C4s. And I think it's interesting because a lot of people are asking, where has the Divine Nine been? We've never really heard of the Divine Nine, even though, most of us have been around for over a century. But I think it's interesting that with the selection of the vice president, who is obviously now running for president, with her being a member of the Divine Nine, she's really helped elevate all of the work that we're doing, because she's obviously intimately familiar because she's a member of one of the Divine Nine organizations. But it's also interesting because over time, while we maybe have not gotten the attention that a lot of larger, C4s and PACs have gotten, we have been quietly, in some ways, doing the work for over a century. So it's definitely exciting to see us get more attention, but it's important also to recognize that we've been building. So this did not happen overnight. So Tony, what makes us different from other organizations?
Yeah, so I think Zetas in Action really exists to fill a gap that I consider there to be in representation sometimes in our political systems, and I think sometimes our communities feel that way too. And so, if you think about how many African Americans make up like the House of Representatives, I think it's like maybe less than 15%. So we don't have a lot of representation in some of those official electoral roles, which is part of what we are looking to do is get more involved in the electoral engagement space. But I think also as an organization, we're really focused on public policy advocacy that really gives us as community members, as grassroots folks, to really have a seat at the table on issues that matter most to our communities. And I think that's an integral way for our entity as Zetas in Action to really set ourselves apart from other organizations because we're really connected to our membership, but just the grassroots in general around lots of issues that matter to our communities, like maternal health, the economy, education, et cetera. So I think that's really important and really unique about the organization. I also think we kind of are able to show up with a little bit of a unique voice that really takes our long history of social action that Sarah Hubbard mentioned really and brings it to like the grassroots coalition level in a way that engages our membership, but not just our membership, also those that have been disenfranchised when it comes to public policy advocacy or don't feel like it's accessible for them to get involved. I think because we already serve as a trusted messenger in our communities, it's unique for us to have like a formalized organization in order to really be able to impact those laws and bills and public policy and kind of show people the wholeness of what civic engagement is. Like we know voter registration is important and getting out the vote is important. But there's a whole nother side to it and a whole nother way that our communities can get involved. And I think we are uniquely positioned as an organization to do that. Unlike some other organizations that maybe focus on specific issues or just democracy in general.
Absolutely. And within the last few months, it's been great to see our growth because we've been involved in lobbying efforts. You know, one of our main issues, as is one of the main issues of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, is maternal health. And so we've been able to begin to lobby legislators about some legislation that maybe has a chance of getting passed at this end of this congressional session. We endorsed several candidates this year who are all members of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, running from everything from the school board to Congress. So I think it was really important that we were able to show our support for these women who were trying to make a difference in their community. And then also we have been active with voter outreach efforts in several states, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And we are also starting to get involved in Virginia because there's been some issues with voters being purged from the rolls. But in those states, we've done everything from send postcards to do phone calls to canvassing to billboards. So getting involved during the election during these last few weeks has been really, really important, and we think it can truly make an impact in the outcome in terms of voter outreach.
Yeah, every bit matters. Every little additional thing we can
Exactly.
do, especially in a race that we know is very, very close, not
Mhm.
just on the presidential level, but in a lot of these down ballot races as well.
Absolutely. And so why do we need more Black women? So we talked about how we are getting involved with endorsing candidates to run for office. So why do we need more Black women running for office and getting involved in politics in general?
Now, well, I'll start, and Sora Monette, if you have anything to add, please do. But, I hear so much about how critical Black women are in our electoral power and how much we exercise that power and we get out there and vote and we canvass and we encourage our family and friends to have a voting plan. And we're just so active in getting, candidates elected. But unfortunately, a lot of the times once candidates get elected, it's like, who is speaking up for issues that matter for Black women? Who's not just like campaigning on those issues, but pulling them through like legislation that we actually see making a difference in our lives. And so I think who better than to make sure that Black women are represented and being tended to from a legislative point of view than other Black women. So it's so important that we make sure we have a seat at the table, that we're not just getting people elected, but that we are actually making sure that the people who are elected really make sure that they're addressing the many and diverse needs of Black women. I feel like women in general are just less likely to run for office, and then women of color just just exponentiate that. And it's even, we're even less likely. So I think it's just so important for us to not just think our only power lies in our vote, but we can actually be amazing public servants, and I think have a great diversity of experience to bring to the table to make sure that we are addressing public policy in a way that is beneficial for all.
Absolutely. Any thoughts, Tony?
Yeah, I think, what the phrase that comes to mind all the time for me is like invest in Black women, right? Like, the most expensive thing about a campaign is like we need money, right? We need people power. And so I think I always think about how we can invest in Black women. And I think we kind of have a case study right now a little bit in, how do we make sure that we are supporting them from a financial standpoint, from volunteering, from just making sure that they have the infrastructure to run and win and actually get to office. Because I think there are sometimes a lot of barriers, but that representation is so important. And so I think thinking and kind of reimagining how we support Black women in all the ways, not just by voting, but also by supporting them and making sure that their voices are at the table. I think we're seeing a lot of leadership in the democracy space already with a lot of community-based organizations and a lot of national organizations, but I think we can go beyond that. But we need people power and support to do that, to make sure that we are represented in places and our issues are represented in places that really matter to really move the needle on public policy and in other areas. So yeah, that's what I'd add.
Absolutely. And so why is it so important to partner with other organizations as we strive to get out the vote?
Yeah, so partnering with organizations helps us widen our net is how I look at it. I think organizations help us broaden our base and our reach. So Zetas in Action, of course, we have the support of our members and those other partnerships that we have as an organization that we've already been leveraging for many years around social action and civic engagement. But I think it allows us to leverage our work in a more meaningful way and maybe to some non-traditional communities and groups of people when we partner with other organizations. I think connecting diverse groups of people to the issues and to these policy questions that sometimes can seem really like complicated and political. And I think partnering with other organizations helps us break it down based on the communities that they serve, which is really a benefit to us being able to really get more people involved. I think the other thing is partnerships help us leverage like those trusted messengers that I mentioned earlier. There are a lot of organizations, from faith organizations to issue-specific organizations that are trusted in the circles and the communities that they operate in. And some of them have like statewide entities. So it helps us to reach both that grassroots local level all the way up to the national and like federal level. And make people aware of laws and policies that are really impacting them from the people that look like them and that represent them. And I think other organizations just have their own ecosystem of their own and followers and supporters that we would never reach if we didn't partner with them. And sometimes they are issue specific, and sometimes people are issue voters, right? Like they care about one issue. And so some of those organizations that are issue specific help us to reach those people as well, kind of bring them in the fold. And then we can leverage their like lived experiences and the things that they bring to the table to expand our power as Zetas in Action, but just as a whole collective of people that are trying to advocate for different policies. So.
Absolutely. A lot of people talk about what's at stake with every election. And I think it's really important that we remember that every election is really important. I think more organizations need to do a better job of showing that because there's so much money and attention placed in a presidential election, it's easy to think that that is the most important because the president has a bully pulpit and we see them so often it makes it feel like that's the most important office to each of our lives. But I think we want to be clear that everyone should know that we also have congressional elections. We have congressional elections every 2 years. Also, there are several Senate races that are up. And then also there are some state legislatures which have elections, and then also obviously local elections. And the issues that touch us at the local level and sometimes even the state level can be so much more impactful on a day-to-day basis. So while this election, you can say it has a lot at stake because of the Supreme Court, or because of the control of Congress, or because the person in the White House does have the power to do a lot from that position. Those are all very important reasons why this election is at stake. But while this election is so important and there's a lot at stake, I think some people also kind of talk about the different candidates running. It is a historic moment to have a woman of color running to be president. And that could definitely change the course of history. It will be exciting. I was just thinking the other day to have a woman president, especially when so many other countries around the world have and we have not. So there's definitely a lot at stake, but I'd love to hear from you all. Do you have any thoughts about what's at stake and you all's opinions?
I love this question, because actually something that really annoys me is when people always, the past like 3 presidential elections, people have said, this is the most consequential election in our history. And it's like, well, if you keep saying that, then like it kind of loses its meaning if every single election is the most consequential, right? So I really love this question. I think, for me, I think yes, what's at stake is the next president could potentially have, 2 to 3 Supreme Court justices, to place, which would obviously be very consequential on like our lives for the next, for the rest of our lifetimes and our children's lifetimes, right? The next generation. Yes, it's very consequential as far as like what kind of, social programs get established or extended. It's consequential as far as reproductive rights and what that means, and being a woman who has autonomy over her body. But for me, what I think stands out the most, and what's really at stake, is what kind of message do we want to send, not only internally within our country, but externally, about who we are as people, what kind of people we value as leaders, what we think is important as far as having character, a strong character, what it means to have a strong, positive vision for the country and for the people who you're going to govern. To me, I think that's one of the most consequential things of all, because we're showing other nations kind of what our ethos is, right? We're demonstrating to the next generation who are the type of people that we think should be elevated, who are the type of people who we think should have leadership positions and make these really critical decisions about the lives that we live. I think the message that we send with our getting out to vote and the actual results of the vote are probably just as consequential as like who wins the election, itself, and what kind of policies they actually move to put into place, or kind of what they do once they get into that position. But I think us as Americans, one, showing up to vote, and exercising our civic duty, and who we decide to elevate, really will say a lot about us as a country. So I'm excited to see what we have to say in a couple of days.
That's a good point. If I could just add, I think you made a good point about every election being the most consequential of our lifetime, because sometimes when you're trying to get people who don't vote as often out to vote, they show reluctance to participate because we don't talk about the good things that elected officials do. There are so many good things happening every day, but if you always talk about how everyone's doing badly and we just need to get better, why would you participate in a system that is constantly getting worse and not getting any better? So it is also our responsibility to make that clear to people, the importance of every election, and also what is getting accomplished. Tony, do you have anything to add?
No, I think y'all said it best. I think for me, it's all about, what is democracy, right? We hear like all these terms about like, we live in we want to create a multiracial democracy, and we want to make sure that everyone has access, and we want to empower voters. and defend that democracy. And so I think we have a great opportunity to show up and sustain it. I think a lot of times people, it stops for a lot of folks, particularly in our community and others. Like after you vote, after the election is done, people are just like, okay, everything will be solved. They will wave their wand and we will all, be rich. But I think what's really important is helping people to understand that it doesn't end there, and that, some of these ideologies and things that our public officials hold, like they linger in people that, are part of these coalitions, that are part of our communities, that are affecting things on the local level, right? It's not just a, one and done kind of thing. And so I think it's an opportunity for us to, because this election has seemed like super condensed. I'm like, we're already here, but it seems super condensed. But like, I think it's showing people that it's not just you cast your vote and that's it. There are ways you can hold elected officials accountable, through advocacy, through other ways of engaging. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to not lose this momentum, I guess, of like people being really excited about the consequential nature of it. And not losing that energy behind, okay, but there's still more to do. And we have the lived experience to really help make the changes that we want to see. And it's all of our responsibility.
I think to your point, oh, sorry, Sora Jones. I was
Go
just
ahead.
going to interject. I think to your point about it doesn't end after the election, I think that's really important because you have to stay engaged so that you can hold the people you elected accountable for the things that they said that they were going to do. So I think a lot of times, you end up, and I know this discourages a lot of people from voting, but you see, people holding on to the same seat for 20 plus years. It's not because they're necessarily doing an amazing job. It's because nobody's held them accountable to do the things that they said they were going to do. People don't show up to vote for those midterm or local elections. And so you keep getting people who are winning seats without having to do really doing the work or really being held accountable for the things that they said they were going to do. So it's really important for all of us to not just like plug in every 4 years, but really stay in tune to what's happening at every single level so we can hold people accountable. And if they're not doing what they said they were going to do, vote them out or run yourself.
Absolutely. And what I've been saying a lot lately is that your power begins on election day. It doesn't end on election day. And so, like you are saying, we need to hold people accountable. We also need to realize that people have the power to negotiate, to have conversations with their elected officials, to have the power to protest. I've had a lot of people, and I actually have kind of evolved in how I feel the protest or rallies are important. I think in the beginning, when I first started getting engaged in politics, I wasn't sure how important they were, but over time, I think they really are. There's just so many different ways that you can influence, whether it's from media attention to just the camaraderie that people feel when they're at a rally, and it builds that momentum, like you all are saying. So, it's really important, like you all said, that it doesn't end then. So lastly, how can people be a part of Zetas in Action's work?
If any of what we have said sounds like it's of interest to you and you'd like to participate, there are a couple of ways you can do so. You can follow us on all of our social channels. We have an Instagram, we have a Facebook, we have a LinkedIn page, we have a YouTube page, and we also have a website. So I encourage you to follow us on all of those social media platforms and check into our website to see what we're up to, what we're doing. We often put out calls for, volunteers, or maybe we want a phone bank or what have you. We're always interested in like building what Sora Jones always says, an army of people who are ready to go and advocate and amplify our messages. So that's a great way. We also, this work requires resources. So if it is, so behooves you, we would encourage you to donate financially to our cause. You can do a one-time donation, or what would be even better would be if you would, set up something that's recurring, so you can kind of continue demonstrating that support over the long term, because this work, again, it takes it takes a lot of resources. And so we would love to have not only your time, but your financial commitment if that is something that is of interest to you.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts before we close?
Well, I just say, as Wendy mentioned, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And so we hope that you all will continue to engage with us, continue to have conversations, continue to figure out ways that you can plug in using your own sphere of influence, your own networks, your own skills and talents. Everyone has the ability to get involved in some way, and you know your communities best. So it's always great for people that are working at the grassroots level to get involved in our work. But yeah, we appreciate you for listening and hope you stay involved.
Awesome.
And
Thank
go
you
vote
all.
if you haven't. I feel like
Yes,
we're probably preaching to the choir, because if you're watching this on a Friday night,
Right.
you probably early voted already and are wearing your I voted sticker. But if you haven't voted
If you
yet,
got one, I didn't get one, but I voted, y'all.
but if you didn't vote, please make sure you go vote, and please make sure that the people in your life that you care about are also voting and also have a plan of action to make sure that their voices are heard on November 5th.
Absolutely. Thank you.